So before I proceed, I'd like to quickly talk about two things. One, if this video seems a bit messy or rushed, that's because it is. Uh, I wasn't originally going to make a video review of this movie, but after watching it, and I literally, I'm Chris Traeger now from Parks and Rec. I literally just got finished watching the movie. After watching it, I decided on the fly to make a video review of me talking about this movie. And the second thing I want to say is that this video is going to be full spoilers. That I'm going to be talking about stuff that happens in this movie in the beginning, middle, and end of the movie. If you really don't want to hear any spoilers, I'm going to quickly give my non-spoiler thoughts on the movie, and then once I do go into spoilers, it's gonna cut to black and white. So once you see the screen go change from color into black and white, then that means I'm going to be talking spoilers. And if you haven't seen it yet and want to and don't want to hear spoilers, then just skip ahead to my rating that I'll give at the end of the video, which will be in color. So yeah, so I just like I said before, I decided just very spontaneously. I wasn't really planning this at all to make a video review of The Irishman because there's a lot to talk about. This really, really great movie. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. This is definitely one of Scorsese's best movies, and yeah, there's I really liked it a lot. Obviously, from a technical standpoint, all aspects, the filmmaking aspects of this are great. Editing, cinematography, acting, writing, directing, what have you. The only technical aspect that threw me off at first, but then I got used to it, is probably the most obvious one, the de-aging CGI effects. I thought that it actually worked really well with Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, but unfortunately, it didn't work that well with Robert De Niro. It worked fine when he was like 40 or 60 years old, but when he was younger, like in his 20s and 30s, it looked it wasn't bad, but it was just noticeable. I Yeah, I just it did kind of take at the beginning of the movie when he saw his character in like his 20s or 30s. It did kind of take me out of the movie just a bit, but then but then the story was so intriguing and the characters were so interesting and the filmmaking was so great that I immediately got sucked back into the movie. So there was a little bit of back and forth in like the first like 30 minutes of the movie where Robert De Niro's character was younger. That's basically one of two issues I have with this movie. The second issue I had is that it is definitely a bit too long. It's never boring, but it's definitely like I it definitely didn't need, in my opinion, need to be as long as it was. Um, like I said, but literally everything else is amazing. Like I said, all technical filmmaking aspects are great. There is something that, and I will get into when I talk about spoilers, I'll get into this a bit more in depth. But there was something really interesting that they did with Anna Paquin's character. I'm not going to reveal exactly what. So Anna Paquin plays one of Robert De Niro's character. His character's name is Frank Sheeran, and she plays one of his daughters, Peggy, older version. We see Peggy as a little girl and then as a full-grown adult, and they did something really interesting with her character. That again, I won't say exactly what until I get into the spoiler section of this video, but I thought that that was really cool. Al Pacino Al Pacino basically got to be he basically kind of acted basically like Al Pacino, like very eccentric and yelling a lot and doing a lot of this movements with his hands and arms and bug had his eyes wide open. But at the same time, it felt different and as great as much as I love Al Pacino, being all like eccentric and stuff. There were moments where he did hold himself back and when his performance was a bit more subtle. And I thought that that really worked in service of the story. And basically, Al Pacino, all the actors were consistently great. The most surprising and best performance, in my opinion, probably in my opinion, comes from Joe Pesci. He plays similar to his character in Goodfellas and Casino. He plays a gangster, but unlike in those movies where he's very violent, out of control, like very scary, here he plays a very different kind of gangster. Yes, he still, is in charge of this crime family. And yes, he still, is kind of a bad person and does bad things, but he's more restrained. Like his performance is very much more subtle and nuanced, which definitely surprised me considering that whenever he's played gangsters in the past, he was, very like crazy and his behavior was disturbing, like really disturbing, and it was kind of hard to watch him on screen sometimes. And here he plays a more, he's definitely holds himself back a lot, and I thought that that really worked. And yeah, I that's basically really all I can say for non-spoilers. So I am going to go full spoilers. I'm going to be talking full spoilers about the movie, so you have been warned. Here we go. So, if you've seen the movie, you know that Frank Sheeran, according to the movie story, is the one that killed Jimmy Hoffa. And I think that I thought that it was at first I did take an issue as to that Jimmy Hoffa was just too, basically, when Jimmy's son Chucky is driving the car, and then that other guy, I can't remember his name, and Frank in the back seat, and there's that funny moment with the fish. Oh, I forgot to say in my non-spoiler section, but basically, also another positive that I have towards this movie is that it's very funny. There are a lot of moments that are actually really funny. But anyway, back to that moment. Basically, when Hoffa's son Chucky is driving a car, and Hoffa's like, "Oh, these guys are fat. I forget if it's Fat Tony or the other Tony. Anyway, oh, Tony was 40 minutes late for meeting me, and what the hell is going on?" And basically, Frank is like, "Oh yeah, things changed. Like, I'm sorry I was late. Russell had to hold me, had me, help me back, had me doing some other stuff, and we're meeting at this house instead." And and Jimmy was like, "Oh, okay, we'll go to the house." At first, I thought he was a little too trusting, but as I was watching the movie, I realized, you know, that the tragedy of that's an intentional choice. Hoffa is too trusting of Frank in that situation because for the first, like, this is like towards the end of the movie, Hoffa's assassination, for the first like 2.5 hours, it the whenever Hoff is on screen, like, this is a credit to Martin Scorsese's direction. He does a really good job of establishing this friendship and this bond that Hoff and Frank have, and the two actually end up like really caring for each other. So at first I was like, Hoff was too trusting of Frank, but then I realized Hoff was too trusting of Frank, and that's why this scene is so emotionally effective in a good way. So yeah, I thought that I thought that Hoffa's death was really sad, actually. Definitely like one of the sadder moments of the film, in my opinion. But the saddest moment was that phone call when um, Frank called Hoffa's widow, Joe. Just hearing her like crying over the phone, and seeing Frank's face on screen with the phone, and him like trying to tell her, like him, like, you can see, like, this is Robert De Niro is an amazing actor. You can see on his face that he's also holding back tears. He's really sad about it, and you can see on his face that he wants to tell Joe what happened because he cared for Hoffa and he really cares for her and her family too. But he can't. He's tied to the Russell and that whole crime family, and he had to do, and well, I mean, he didn't have to do it, but he feels like he had to do it, and just that phone call was just so, it was so agonizing to watch, and it's definitely one of the more it's definitely, in my opinion, one of the most powerful moments in the film. Two other really powerful moments. Like I said in my non-spoiler section, they did something really cool, interesting with Anna Paquin's character, and that was that she really only has like a couple of lines in the movie. Um, she doesn't speak for throughout the movie, except right before Frank calls Joe. They're watching the TV, the news update about Hoffa's death, and then Frank's wife is like, "Hey, have you called Joe yet?" And Frank is like, "No." And then Anna Paquin, her one line is asking Frank why. Why haven't you called him yet? And at that moment, she realizes, when Frank doesn't address her at all. Basically, she realizes that her dad, throughout the movie, it's been established that Peggy is really uncomfortable with what her dad does, and later it's revealed that the whole family, all four daughters, were really uncomfortable with what Frank's profession was. But it's at that moment when Peggy realizes that her father is a monster, that her father has done really awful, monstrous things, and in her mind, he is a monster. And Anna Paquin's acting was great, and I thought that it was like a lot. Some people really didn't like that she only had one line. I see a few reviews online saying that, but I thought that that was a really interesting, clever storytelling choice. Of course, the final devastatingly emotionally effective moment I want to talk about is the end, when Frank um, and the priest visited Frank in the nursing home right before Christmas, and the film just ends with Frank all alone in the nursing home, realizing that the kind of regretting the life that he's led, even though it has uh, given him financial prosperity, financial and power status for his family and himself. He does regret that life, or it's heavily implying that because he's all alone now. You know, he's estranged from his daughters, especially Peggy, and I thought that that was a really great way to end the movie. I really liked it a lot, and I also basically every time Al Pacino was on screen was really effective for me, whether it was for humor, drama, especially Hoffa's death. I got really sad, like almost to the point of like tearing up a bit for for Hoffa and his family, and even for Frank. I felt a little bit bad for Frank, even though he didn't have to kill um Hoffa, but it's made obvious that he didn't want to. That's basically those four moments that I just talked about are basically really the only spoilery things I want to talk about. The rest, I guess I could quickly address Stephen Graham. I forget exactly which Tony he was, but Stephen Graham was great, and that scene with him and Hoffa in prison was really funny as well. And I thought that the writing in that scene was especially great, like their banter with one another, and the actors were doing a really good job, and you could see that they actually really did hate each other. So and also that whole award ceremony, that Frank getting that award, that whole sequence was brilliant in my opinion. So yeah, that's really it for spoilers. Um, this movie is amazing. My only real issues with the movie is that it's a little too long. Even though I was never bored, I do feel like it didn't have to be as long as it was, and also the CGI was a bit noticeable at times. But those are really minor issues. I love this movie. It's one of Scorsese's best, definitely top five, definitely top 10 of 2019 for sure. Um, I might give this a perfect rating. I'm definitely gonna rewatch it at some point in the future, and upon rewatch, I might give this a perfect score. But for now, I'm going to give this a rating of 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. So yeah, I really enjoyed this movie, and if you guys watch it, I hope you do too. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. It is sorry that it is a bit rushed. I really wasn't planning on making this, but I want to make this video because I love this movie and I really want to talk about it, and I hope you guys will love this movie too. So yeah, thank you for watching, and see you guys hopefully soon. Bye.
겉진 골라